Hello, everyone. Deborah Neal Baker here with another serious business conversation. And today, I've really been, I look forward to all these conversations, but this one today I've been very excited about it because our conversation is with Gordon Miller. Now, Gordon, he's not a hairdresser, but like me, I think that he's a beauty industry evangelist or advocate. And he's got a long history. He was with Pivot Point for, I don't know, probably a couple decades. He was with Milady. He was the executive director of the National Cosmetology Association. And he's now the CEO of Hairbrain. And most of you know Hairbrain started in 2909, and it's really been the leading digital and socially based community for craft hairdressers and colorists. So let's go ahead and have Gordon join us. Hello, Gordon.
Hey, Deborah. It's so nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We've been kind of chatting in other places, but it's nice to see you live.
We have. It is. We have. Yeah. And in fact, I've been listening to Clubhouse and participating a little, but eavesdropping mostly. And the thing about you, Gordon, that you bring is you have an objective. This is the way I look at it. You are data driven, you're objective, and you are deeply rooted in our industry. And it gives you a very unique perspective and a lot of insight that some of us, that's kind of, it's there, but it's kind of missing because nobody is really addressing it. And so first of all, I'd like to know, and I'm sure the audience would too, so when and how did you happen, since you're not a hairdresser, how did you end up here in this industry?
Completely by accident, so like so many, it was not in the plan. So I graduated school from the University of Florida. I have a 4-year degree. I majored in investment finance and I had a minor in economics. And that minor in economics explains a lot of how I look at the professional beauty industry today and how I think about things. I carried that forward. But when I graduated college, I knew I didn't want to do investment finance like a lot of people in college. You don't always know what your future is going to be when you're 18 years old. You pick a major and, so I went down that path. When I was done, I was a little bit lost and I decided to move across country. My folks had relocated to Denver. So I moved out to move in with my folks. I kind of forgot when I moved back home, which people didn't do back then, but I moved back home. I kind of forgot that I came out as being gay while I was in college, but forgot to tell my parents. So I was back in their house, I was in the closet, and I needed to get out of the house, but I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So back then you open the newspaper and you look for a part-time job. And I found a newspaper job in a company called Lavons Incorporated in the Denver Bank Building, was where it said. I thought, my dad's going to think I'm in finance. I'll be chill for a bit. It'll all be good. I'll find a job there. And I went and I interviewed and I got a job as they didn't call it that, but it was an administrative assistant-like position. And it took me about 6 or 7 or 8 weeks to even know what this company was, because I was just put in a room to slide paper around and shuffle stuff. And come to find out, it was a chain of beauty schools and beauty salons. And they started to slowly warm up to me and I warmed up to them, but I was in an office. I never saw the hairdressers. I never saw anything about the business. I just saw a lot of paper. But one day the owner she's like, I like you. She said, I want to take you around with me today and show you what we do. And so they had, I think, 10 or 11, 12 salons and I believe 7 beauty schools. And I got the grand tour. And the salons were cool. And the more I went along, the more I was like, there's a lot of gay people here. I'd never worked anywhere where there were gay people. I'd never been around gay people, just generally speaking, because everybody was closeted back then. And I was like, this seems like such a kind of interesting environment. The last place we stopped was one of the beauty schools, and there was a drag queen working at the front desk. And I just said, this is it. This is where I belong.
I love that.
There's much more to the story.
No, but that's great. I love it. I love it. Well, good for you and good for us, because I think you contribute a lot and always have to our industry. So thank you for that. So I'm just going to jump in with this question. So what do you think is the most important conversation that we, the collective we, should be having right now?
That's so easy for me. So
Good.
easy for me. Yeah, I think two things, and they're very much connected. I think first and foremost, I think we need to turn to optimism. I think we've lived a horrific year, and I think the end of it is in sight, fingers crossed. But it's been such a negative year, and it's dragged us all down so much. And as I think about the past and look to the future, I've really pivoted in the last couple of weeks and said to myself, I truly believe the industry is going back very quickly to where it was. I don't believe there's going to be a huge difference between the past and the future, except in how consumers are. And more than ever, I think we need to be thinking about our customers and how they think and how they behave and how they will come out of this. But my sense, watching, reading, listening to people is they're not going to be that different once they feel safe, which we believe is coming up soon. And most importantly, related to all that, everything it takes to succeed in this business, we knew before the pandemic. And I don't see anything about the pandemic that has made it any different. In fact, what it's done has made me believe that everything we knew before matters more than ever. And we need to double down on every bit of it. And there's going to be so much opportunity ahead for so many, in part because so many will not become optimistic. They'll be dragged down by what we've been through. So many will not make the really big efforts, I think, that need to be made to stand out going forward, but there's so much opportunity ahead.
Yeah, in listening to you, everybody's saying, oh, this pandemic and COVID, it's going to turn our industry upside down and things are going to be so different. And I've been, like you, not like you, but I've thought, okay, so what is really going to be that different?
Right.
I mean, really, how different can it be? I mean,
and, and the state boards regulate, anything post-COVID that's, sanitation it's going to be turned over to state board. Now, those of us who've been around for a while know that that's a very long process. So if there's regulations coming, it'll be in 5 years.
right.
And for the rest of it, it's up to business people to make decisions, as you have through COVID. Some of them are legal, but as soon as they lift capacity restrictions, and whether masks are happening or not, it feels like we're kind of where we were. But again, everything depends on how your clients and prospective clients feel and how you make them feel. But again, I've talked to so many people in Chicago, and what I'm hearing are two things: consumers who just want it to be the way it was in every part of their life. Everybody's ready. That's number one. On the salon side, again, I'm great optimism, because I'm talking to a lot of middle of the road salons who are saying to me, we're either almost back to where we were, or we feel like we're getting there. And they are being optimistic for the first time in 8-9 months, which makes me very happy and hopeful.
So where are you hearing most of the opposite of optimism, and the ones that probably are going to struggle with getting back to where they were? Or my question would be, where were they before?
Well, you mentioned, I think you mentioned Robert Cromans. I can't remember, but Robert early on has been saying things about the virus, kind of metaphorically. He says, viruses that attack humans, first and foremost, if you're weak physically, you're more susceptible. Like I'm a lifetime diabetic. I'm very high risk for COVID because of the weakness, that another disease, gives to me. So viruses attack the weak, attack all of us. Most of us can survive. Our systems allow us to get through it. Some get through it well, some not so well. Some of us don't survive. Some of us don't make it. And he said, it's the same with businesses. This virus, almost like an economic downturn of severe proportions, is going to impact those coming into the situation who are already weak, who were already without cash reserves, who were already, perhaps on the down in terms of where their business should be, or they're not keeping up with the current trends or the marketing, or on and on and on. And most of the thought leaders outside of beauty have said, if you were to say, what is the one thing that COVID is doing to the world beyond health? It's accelerating trends. It's accelerating what was happening before COVID. And arguably, it's also accelerating the life of businesses, or the lifespan. So if you were kind of sickly before, It could accelerate your sickness. If your staff was unhappy before, it could accelerate their departure. If your customers thought you were average before or not paying enough attention, it could accelerate their departure. And I have such a good example. My mother and my sister both have been with the same hairdresser, different parts of the country, but both of them 15 years plus, very loyal clients. They both changed hairdressers during the pandemic. I was shocked. I was like, what? And they both said similar things, which was, I love her, but I haven't been happy for a long time. She won't change. My sister, like, she will not change my hair color. She tells me no. She literally tells me no. She's like, now we're friends, and she feels comfortable. And my mother was a different version of that. So that fascinated me. And that was the first moment where I said to myself several months ago, oh my gosh, there's an opportunity for new clients. There is a big opportunity for new clients. And salons that I talked to today that are feeling optimistic, almost all have a similar story, and they are shocked by new client growth that has occurred over the last couple of months. Shocked.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I think that, you and I both coming from the client's point of view, I've always thought anything like this just gives the client kind of the space to defect.
Permission.
Yeah,
Permission.
it's like, okay, now's the time. Now's the time to break up,
Exactly.
So, yeah, so your experience lately with salons and the conversations that are happening, do you think that some of those people that have struggled, they're going to wake up and do things differently, or do you think that they're just what's going to happen to them?
Well, first off, I think so. To me, the biggest question post-pandemic is going to be how many clients are left for everybody. Because we know some people have made decisions probably not to come back to salons. Many of those people because of age, and maybe they would have aged out anyway. But there is a percentage of the population who are going to change their behavior fundamentally because of safety feelings or whatever. And I think the projection that we're going to lose some clientele, that the gross number of clients will shrink a little bit, I think is true. So here's the other side of that coin. Giant industry, 140 million or so clients. If that shrinks by 10% and the number of salons who service the 140 million stays the same for the 10% less, then the pie got smaller, but the number of people eating at the pie has stayed the same. Potentially, if nothing else changed, everybody would suffer a little bit. And so the big question really, I think, is I firmly believe we will have less clientele in the near term, and we don't know what will happen with the number of service providers or salons. Our own estimation at Hairbrained is we think we're looking at maybe 10% closures across the country. And that's after listening to lots of people. We think it's important to say it will vary by geography. So California being the wild card, New York City being the second wild card. And then something that never gets talked about enough, in my opinion, and to me it's one of the big shifts in the industry in the last 10 years. We always talk about the salons, what's happening with salons. For me, it's important to say what's happening to salons by category. The value salons is a category, the independent in the middle of the road is a category as a commission salon. The luxury, the top end is different. The independent is different. The rental chair is different than the suite. And every category is different, and when we think of them amorphously, I think we don't tell the true picture of what's happening. Anybody who's servicing clients who make $50,000 a year or less, if you follow the economic data in America, that's a group who's in trouble financially. They're more than likely going to make some changes in their behavior because they don't have much choice. They have to support the lives that they're living with less, the children perhaps that they have with less. So they're going to make some decisions. So that salon that has a lot of clients who are those working the office workers, as an example, not the executives or the managers, but the office workers. There's potential challenge in that side of the market, whereas the executive crowd, the management crowd, the corporate people who are a little bit higher up the ladder, they've actually come out of this really well and are going to be desperate for luxury and probably willing to pay extra for it. Two very different stories.
Yeah. So in other words, that first that category, kind of the middle and under, is at most risk.
Right.
And then the opportunity, a lot of opportunity is with that what you call luxury, that
Hmm.
category.
Yeah. And I would say like a Van Michael, I'd put in that category. So
Yeah.
it has to do with price and also the experience itself. I also think though, many of those people who were in that middle, let's again look at that $50,000 a year office worker, maybe who has a kid and a cat, and they've had a hard time, and it's going to take a while for them to catch up. And they used to go to the salon, every 3-4 months and have highlights or whatever, but it was important to them, lower price. They may move downstream to the value price. The loss in the middle might be a gain somewhere else, or they might go to home hair color and still come in for their haircuts. There's just so much, in play here, but I think it's important that we take a step back and realize that there's all these niches and they don't operate the same. Men will react differently to the end of the pandemic and going back to the salon, I would argue, differently than women. Because we have different perceptions about service and our experience in getting our haircut typically than women do. It's just part of.
So are you saying that you think that the barbering category is a little more stable?
I do believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe that. Yeah, and I believe it was more. So it's interesting. One of the other challenges I've had through the pandemic. We've told a big story to. Well, yeah, I will say we told a big story to ourselves is that we're the industry that always knew what to do. Pandemic, we safety and sanitation, we know all about it. I always say two things. Well, Tabitha Coffey made a career pointing out that salons aren't as clean as they should be on television. And I can't tell you how many hairdressers loved that show and went back to their salons and did a little better. I walked by 2 barber shops on my way to the grocery store, and since the pandemic has started, I basically have only a couple places I go, the grocery store being the main one. And I go twice a week. I walk to the grocery store. It just gets me out and about. And I walk past 2 barber shops. And since it started up till now, neither of them have been compliant. And that's not scientific. That doesn't mean anything. But I've heard from a lot of other friends, the barber category is its own. But I've seen that there. But I've also seen salons in Chicago that have not been compliant. So I think it's been very wonky. But I will, and I bring that up not to pick on those barbershops. I believe there's an awful lot of men, for whatever reason, who seem perfectly happy with going into non-compliant places. And there's a whole male-female thing about how we react to the virus that I believe is fundamental to who we are.
I try to be very mindful, and I don't call it male and female. I call it feminine and masculine, which we all embody both of those, right? However, I do think that the feminine usually operates with a little more awareness and wisdom.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And as a gay man, I got my share of feminine, so it's all good. Yes. I'm claiming it right now.
So some of the things that I've heard you talk about that I thought were intriguing is that I heard you say on a Clubhouse conversation about the group of student graduates coming out of beauty schools now, and I don't remember if you gave a timeline, are going to be some of the most, and you may not have said it this way, like the least competent of student graduates, because we've had to do so much virtual education. So they haven't had their hands in hair.
Yeah. And that was not a criticism of schools. I mean, I'm just trying to make a statement of reality, because I think, again, as the larger industry, we need to understand it. Now, people can disagree with me, of course, but if you believe it as I do, and it's just a function of having worked in the school side of the industry for over 20 years and spent lots of time in schools and spent the first almost 10 years of my career running schools. I know what happens when you don't have any traffic on your clinic floor, or you can't put students on the clinic floor. I know what happens when you get caught during periods of even old school where we just had to go book learning for a while, like everybody's got to sit and read. I know that's not what's happening, but I also know that the entire country, regardless of age, regardless of category of study, has struggled with distance learning because we have to pivot so darn fast. My friends in publishing, and I've got many in the education side of the business, I think have done an amazing job bringing all kinds of resources. I think this industry's done its best effort and perhaps has performed better than most in shifting to digital. But that doesn't mean that the group coming out of school will necessarily be more competent than a group that was before it. And I think every sign points to me they'll be less competent. Nobody's fault. It is what it is. But the reason I bring it up is that salons, and I've said this for a long time, having lived on the school side for a long time, because my entire career, 42 years, I've heard one thing very consistently, and that's that, and I'll say this kind of flippantly, but that everything that's wrong with the industry is the beauty school's fault. I don't believe that at all. I lived on that side for a very long time. And I always believe the missing part of the conversation, and I've worked for large companies that are not salon organizations as well, is that in corporate America, employers, people who would have employed me as a college graduate, as an example, have training programs. They invest a lot of effort into training the people they hire and keeping them training throughout their careers so that they hold on to their staff. Our industry doesn't do that so well. And I've long said to salons, if you think the schools aren't doing something that needs to be done, and you've recognized that no matter how much you holler and scream, nothing changes, then you need to make some decisions as a business person as what you're going to do with the people you hire to make them competent in order to do the work that you're paying them to do. Because if they can't do it, it is your fault. It is your fault, the salon owner, because you know what's coming. And I only am adding to the dialogue to say, whatever was coming before that you maybe were struggling with, it's going to even be more struggle, and you better get ready for it. And if you've got your stuff together as a business person, you will take action. You will support those people with extra effort.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, and I think you've kind of answered it, is, how does this impact the salon business, this group of less than competent graduates? How does this impact the salon business? Both, what's the opportunity? And then also, what is the negative side of that? And, how should they be responding? And I think you've said it. You've got to have they need a training program.
And if not a training program, mentorship. Let's say, you're a suite and you're bringing someone in who's a paid assistant, or you're a 3-chair salon, and maybe a training program per se. But there's mentorship. There's figuring out suggestions, coaching, go watch these videos, go practice these haircuts, go, there's ways to informally create opportunities for young people who you're working with that will give them a better chance of surviving. To me, one of the big things is that I believe employers have moral responsibilities to the people they hire. That these are young people who are coming into the industry with aspirations and dreams, and they're very real. I spent, like I say, decades with them. People would often say to me, oh, they come to beauty school because they can't do anything else. Someone says, go to beauty school. And I'm like, I haven't met that person, and I managed a school with 500 students in it. I haven't met, I'm sure they exist, but I've met hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of young people who came into the industry when I was around this because they wanted to do this. Stuff sometimes gets in the way. And I would argue that the thing that gets in the way most is the stuff that doesn't happen when they get to the salon. The lack of training, the lack of leadership. Everybody's all excited about the independent movement. Why is that happening? I can tell you why I believe it's happening. And my opinion is based on, again, hundreds of conversations over years. It's very consistent for years. The place I worked had no leadership. The place I worked didn't have a marketing program. The place I worked said all the clients belonged to the salon, but told me to go to Starbucks to get clients. I felt no culture. I felt no support. I mean, so much of the movement to this new model has come out of dysfunction in salons. Now, that's not the only reason. There's plenty of other reasons. There's people, I've had friends who've worked great salons, had great careers in those salons, and just got to the point where they kind of aged out of the salon in their minds, or they reached a plateau financially, and the menu would not provide any more room for them. So they went out on a limb and did something. But as I like to say to salons, the average American works 5 years on a job. And we as an industry have this weird indentured servitude. Like you go to work for a salon, you're never allowed to leave, ever. And I always say to salon owners when they say how upset they are, say, I built them up and they were here for 10 years. And I understand all that, and I understand the feelings that go with it. But I always ask the same question. It's like, were you born into this, or did you work for someone else at one point, and did you leave them by chance? I'm just curious. And usually they left with their book, by the way.
Yeah. And now it's not even a question. People leave with their book, where it used to be you try to you know,
Now you leave with this.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, what about the length of mentorship and training? Because I also, from our own experience, is that we know that the young hairdresser, and I don't think it's that different than it's ever been, but now it's not tolerated, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
this whole how long? I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there that's doing the old, 2 years of
right.
training, like the old that Vidal Sassoon approach,
Yeah, yeah.
to training and mentoring.
Well,
Um,
and it's almost gone away. Again, apprenticeships and assistantships. I see so many conversations online, and we have them at Hairbrained. And Gerard's really, fond of saying, that the best way to succeed in this industry is to find a great apprenticeship or assistantship and begin your career there. Or if you began somewhere else and are unhappy, you still feel you need to, refine your skills, go do that. And that's how he had his career. Most of our favorite hairdressers live that same life, but it's almost impossible to find them. They're like dinosaurs. Those positions have just shrunk to such a small number and we didn't replace it with anything. I think to me, this is one of the bigger issues facing the industry is that a lot of we've changed. That if in my early career, apprenticeships and assistantships were the foundation probably for 80% of the good salons in this country. And they're not here anymore, or if they are here, they're being eliminated or downsized to your point. And here's a major challenge for salons today. We have a generation that we're reacting to, and I'm not sure sometimes if we're reacting the right way or the wrong way. But when we say that we know that a person can be more successful by going through this, and we've got years of proof that it works, and then things change, life change, the roles change, and we've got folks coming in where that is no longer a fit. So we say, okay, fundamentally, it's not a fit. We're not going to be able to hire people. We're not going to be able to achieve our goals with this. We must change with the times. My question is, how did we change without losing whatever it was that it did? Meaning that the goal was to get people to a certain level of proficiency. If the way we used to get people to proficiency doesn't work anymore for whatever reason, they won't participate. What's the new way of getting them to proficiency? And I've yet to hear it.
so from your, observation and your experience in these conversations, so what is the solution? Do you have, I mean, I know
Yeah,
you must
I
have
have
some
thoughts.
opinion about it. So what are your thoughts about that?
So this is kind of big stuff, and it kind of goes back to understanding perhaps where some of it comes from. So going back to what I said a few moments ago, so this part of a person's career experience that we're talking about, I think you and I would agree is fundamental. The past has shown so important. So a young person wakes up one day and says, I want to go to beauty school, and they do. And they go to beauty school, and we kind of know what that experience looks like. It varies from school to school, but we know what the topics are. And they come out, and salons like Paris Parker have decided the next best step for creating success is an assistantship program. Makes a lot of sense. If I was going to work in finance at a company, I would go through something similar in that company. All good best practice stuff. And again, now it's changed. Much of the problems I think the industry has today have to do with lack of proper perspective and expectations of the individual human being. That we're an industry, especially with social media, where information just flows through a fire hose. And young people in particular have the most difficult job of sifting through the good from the not so good from the just wrong. And because all this information helps create perceptions of the world and what we think should be coming. Most young people come into this industry were told before they got to the salon what it would look like. And I believe that the salons and the schools need to come together and start to change the conversation so that expectations of graduates are different than they are today. Because I believe over the last 10 or so years, maybe more, that the expectations are not as clear as they used to be. And I think when I first came into the industry, I was used to hearing schools talking about it takes 5 years to establish yourself. It takes this kind of process. There's many ways to get there, but it's not graduate, be anything you want to be. We didn't have as many conversations, and I actually don't like this conversation very much, and I hear it almost every day. You can be anything you want to be. This career is filled with so many opportunities, and it is. It is. But 90% of those opportunities are being behind a chair and doing hair. And so when we say, and I used to go to beauty schools and talk for fun in Chicago. It was like my hobby, like just to stay in touch. I love beauty schools, and I love students. And so I would just, when I had time, I would just go out and speak. And then I started doing these little mentorship things, and I'd say, because the students would want to talk to me afterwards. So I started a little coffee thing, and I say I would take 6 students to coffee, and they had to give me a resume and a sheet telling me their goals in 1 year and 5 years. And then I would pick the 6 that would come. We would meet and we would spend a couple hours talking about their aspirations and asking questions about the industry. It was shocking to me, and this is pretty close to being correct. I think I did 6 of these meetings. So, like 40 people total. And almost everybody wanted to be an educator. Almost everybody. And I was like, wait, so you just went to school to become hairdressers, but you all want to be educators. Now, what they really all wanted to be was platform artists. And I remember these conversations so well because I
Oh
can
my
just
God.
be this kind of person sometimes. So I remember saying to the first group that said this to me, I was like, so you understand what a platform artist is? Yeah, they named some names. And I said, now, do you understand how that person got there? Well, kind of. And I said, well, there's a thing called national educators with the brand that you're wanting to be a part of. So, do you know what that is? And they're like, yeah, those are the people that teach around the country. And I'm like, no, those are the people who teach around the suburbs of Chicago who live in Chicago, but they're called national educators, so. And then I started to walk them through the path of being an educator, which I explained to them almost always includes being a hairdresser 80% of the time. And the more I had these conversations, the more I saw people's eyes get really big and their heads almost explode sometimes, because these were students who were at the end of schooling and had these dreams and aspirations that I believe, and I think they believe listening to me, were maybe not as connected to reality as they should have been. So I think we don't do enough to set students up for success by way of the conversations. Forget about teaching. It's about setting proper expectations and setting that expectations around graduation. Like what's it? What do you got to do? Because here's the thing that we knew as schools, and salons know this: the first 24 months after graduation are like swimming through the sharks. The failure rate's very high. It's higher than it needs to be. The angst, and the mental, so many people go south. So many young people just go south. They blame themselves, they take the wrong job. I mean, it's such a rough period of time. And I have always felt that it's like we threw the kids in the deep end of the pool and just left.
Right. They didn't get swimming lessons.
They
Yeah.
barely got swimming lessons. Some of them are
Yeah.
paddling, and some of them will make it. But and then we're
And
not on
some
the
will
other side.
make it by just dog paddling, which is the mediocrity.
Yes. And yet the ones who are going to receive them, who should be on the other side of the pool, say, come on, let me help you, that's not there either. It's so I feel like we have this no man's land in the industry that's just gotten worse over time. It's always kind of been there, but as apprenticeships and assistantships went away, as independence came along, and uh, too many people getting the perception of that I could do that the day I graduate beauty school. Um, Adjacent to that, is I'll just connect the dots. But suites is a perfect example. I've talked to so many people coming, just starting their career, and they want to go right into a suite. And what I think is unspoken about suites is I believe they have a very high turnover rate. Everybody talks about them being the next biggest thing. And I like to say, well, I get it. First of all, I love the model. I think it's really cool. I have lots of friends who do it. I've talked to so many who are loving it, who are succeeding in it. And then about a year or 2 years ago, I said, I think I'm talking to the wrong people. Or maybe I'm asking the wrong questions. What if I start saying, hey, friend, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. How are your neighbors? And that's when I started hearing more and more conversations about the high turnover in some suite locations. And I would argue that the attrition, the turnover in suites is significant because if suites were as crazy busy as everybody thought when the pandemic hit, there would be no suites to go to.
Well,
And yet,
would suites be a recruiting opportunity? I mean, how many people in suites do you think would kind of wish they hadn't done that and would like to go back to a salon and
sure.
team environment?
Yeah, I think
Or are they,
everybody's there's a recruiting opportunity,
yeah.
after what we've been through. And I think there's a lot of people. So during the pandemic, let's look at it that way. During the pandemic, a lot of people made choices, out of desperation, many of them, or again, things sped up, or their salon closed. And now what am I going to do? And but there was a definite shift towards independence. And to me, I would argue that those who were not independent already, who moved over, a large percentage of them were probably not the kind of people who were built for independence. Meaning, had there been no pandemic, maybe they never would have done it. And if they never
Mhm.
would have done it, it's probably because they were never meant to do it. When young people ask me if I think a suite is a good idea for them, because I get a lot of those questions, I always say, ask yourself two questions. So make it really simple for you. There's more you should consider, but start with these two. What percentage of the clientele that you take in every week in the salon where you work are walk-ins? Because whatever that percentage is, it's gone. The moment you move, it's gone. I said, also, if you move across the street, you will lose maybe half your clientele, maybe 70% of your clientele. We know historically clients don't follow as much as you think they're going to. But forget about that. Just let's think about walk-ins, number one. Number two, what time do you have to be at work every day in your current job? 10 o'clock. Um, how good are you showing up on time? Okay. When you work for yourself, what are the chances you will show up on time every day for yourself? And they usually kind of have a quizzical look or a quizzical tone in their voice. Some are better than others. And typically, even the ones who say, yeah, I can be there on time every day, I say, well, that's not really the right answer either, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better be there an hour before you open, hour early before you open. So, there's this entrepreneurial spirit, which I think those who were going into suites, many of them had. And I worry that the pandemic has forced some of the wrong folks into the wrong direction. And so, yes, they may be looking to come back. Hard to know.
Well, correct. Just give me your feedback on this. So, because of the pandemic and kind of what I've noticed that it seems like what people really need and want is both stability and flexibility. And of course, I know that a salon and a commission salon or whatever the model is has the most ability to offer stability and flexibility. Now, I heard someone say, a young hairdresser who is supposedly doing very well in a suite situation or a rental situation, that he has no interest in and health insurance or 401k or any of that, that none of that was made a salon attractive to him.
Mhm.
Which again, I think we're going back to what you were talking about, where their expectation and their perspective on reality is a little skewed. Like,
Well, there's been a lot of studies done in corporate America. And I was a publisher of American Salon before I joined Hairbrain, and that I left American 3.5 years ago. But we worked for a very big kind of conglomerate company that had many, many departments and divisions and hundreds of employees. And I remember there, every year they have the 401k renewals as our retirement fund. And there was always a massive effort to the 20 to 30 something crowd. And there's been a lot of studies done that regardless of what career path you're on or what industry you're in, people in their 20s and 30s don't think about their mortality. They don't think about retirement. And literally where I was working at that time, they would bring young people into HR and just give them extra orientation and try to really truly get them to appreciate what was there. And the only reason they did that was they had other research that said people with 401ks were more likely not to leave the company. So they had this push pull,
right,
so.
sure,
And
sure.
but I do think when the pandemic started, someone said to me, if you could have changed just anything about the world, in our industry world, pre-pandemic, anything, one thing, and maybe things would be a little different or better, what would it be? And I was like, it's so easy that hairdressers knew how to manage their money, because anybody who knows how to manage their money saves money. I mean, you're not a good money manager if you have no savings, and what we learned in the pandemic is the biggest hurdle that folks had to jump was the financial one. Um, 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, I ran into a Chicago hairdresser at the dog grooming place where I go, and we were both masked and we recognized each other, and I was like, "How are you?" And she said, "I'm fantastic." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And we were shut down. I was like, "That's so good to hear." I was like, "How?" She said, "I have 9 months worth of savings." She's like, "I've always been a saver." She said, "I'm using this time to rethink my business, to reinvent myself, to get closer to my family." She said, "Shit happens, and we'll be fine." you know, and um, and truly, so I believe that an understanding of money, which connects to things like 401ks, is critical. I wish that schools would start teaching financial literacy. I also wish high schools would start teaching financial literacy. I think one of the best sources of financial literacy, because it's not complicated. You know, money is about habits. It's understanding some very fundamental principles, and it is very pretty darn basic, even if you're not a math mind. And then habits. Putting money aside. Probably our mutual friend Michael Cole has been teaching business, practices for a million years. I remember hearing Michael 25 years ago, 30 years ago saying, "Put your tips in the bank in a savings account, and never touch them." That was his only advice on savings. I cannot count the number of salon owners and hairdressers I met years later who said, "Oh my God, I have a salon because of Michael Cole. I have a house because of Michael Cole. I put my son through college because of Michael Cole, because I saved my tips." So financial literacy, is an issue. And I recommend, by the way, to any hairdresser who's looking for a source, Dave Ramsey. I think daveramsey.com. He makes it so easy. He makes it so simple. And it's basically, have some emergency savings, start to create some longer term savings, and don't have credit card debt. End of story.
I know I listened to, I had a conversation with Eric Fisher a few weeks ago, and it was I mean, there's no secret sauce. It's really, the thing is with the people like him and Van and Carrie Davis, it's really discipline.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's discipline.
Yep.
And
And
which
the
is,
independents, when I think about the ones I know, the independents who are really across the industry, when you look at successful people, they almost always have that attribute. Almost individual
yeah.
stylists, commission, rental, platform artists, salon owners like that, discipline and determination and patience.
So are those your parting words? Is that, if there was, is that your, since we're kind of running out of time here and we could go on and on, but is that your,
My parting word,
what would be your parting words?
My parting words would be, there's never-ending conversations going on right now about what the future of the industry will be, and there's so many opinions, and it's hard to know where we're going to land. But I would say one thing to always consider is the best way to understand the future is to look at the past. And we have a really deep and rich history that's filled with examples of how to build great businesses. And I think if we look to the past, it will inform our future. And I think those who really double down on what's been proven to work in the past are going to come through this in the best way possible. I'm very hopeful.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Gordon. And thank you for, for all of your wisdom and your advocacy and all of that. I really, and, I know that you're participating so much and adding so much value on Clubhouse, and I know that that's kind of it's a new format for people, but I really do get so much value out of your perspective. It's very grounded and realistic, and very much appreciated.
Thank you. And I have to say, before you end, because I have to give you the compliment, the shared compliment, because it's so sincere, and that is that. Serious Business, which you all just did digital, and I got to watch. It was a beautiful digital experience, and I cannot say that about most of the digital events I've looked at. So kudos to the entire team.
Oh,
You know, you did
thank you.
really, really great job. And more importantly, the legacy of Seriously Business. You know, we've named some names of successful people. We both know a lot of people. Serious Business is one of those events that is not only iconic in the industry, but I don't think it's possible to count the number of stylists and salon owners whose lives and careers and businesses have been fundamentally changed because you created Serious Business that many years ago. It remains one of the most stellar events out there, and I say that from my heart. And
Oh,
so
thank you.
kudos.
Thank you so much, Gordon. I think that we're aligned, that we're really here. The thing that keeps us so passionate is that we really are committed to elevating our industry.
Yeah, because they're
I
the best
mean,
people in the world.
I
They're just the best.
like you, I'm not a hairdresser, but I love our industry, and it has so much passion and love, and it's fun.
It's so fun.
And I always say, the one thing I always say about our industry, it is so developmental.
That's so
Because
funny.
it really is. So anyway, in parting, thank you for those acknowledgments. And I want to, please ask the audience to please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can have access to, a lot of these conversations and a lot of things that we've done. Yeah. Gordon, now Neal Corporation we're almost an 80-year-old company.
Oh my goodness.
I know. We're really, I know, we're at a fourth.
I was going to say five generations.
We're at the fourth generation now. So yeah, it's I'm very, very proud. So thank you. I really appreciate our relationship, and I thank you so much.
Same.
Thank you.